Hmm. Hello. Just before I actually went live here, I was thinking to myself how I should. Oh, hi, Elizabeth. Elizabeth and Elizabeth. Oh, my goodness. I was laughing to myself because I was thinking how I should find some way to do like some B-roll or outtakes or something for these because I always get on and then I start fussing with my hair and I put on my shirt and I take off my shirt and anyway I do the whole thing so that I can arrive and appear casually sort of lovely. That's the intention anyway. So welcome. That was an unplanned little intro. As always, there's things that I want to share and speak to, but I really love the dialogue. I really love the conversation. So please share your own reflections, your questions, your shares. All of that is welcome, and I really love it. So I wanted to do this. I wanted to do this particular Facebook Live today about the power of women coming together in supportive, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say community. You know, that shows up in a lot of different ways. These are the communities of mothers that we have around us when we're parents, or the friends that we have. Sometimes we come together and actually live together, or sometimes there are these groups. Like, part of what sparked my desire to speak about this is witnessing what's happening inside the No Man Diet Facebook group. So I have the program that I'm running, and they're receiving my content via email, but I set up a private Facebook group for these women as a way to connect and to stay engaged in between pieces. And frankly, I was in awe. Like, I added these women and I gave them some really simple questions to start introducing themselves, and they just started sharing with the most inspiring authenticity and vulnerability and generosity. And then they were commenting on each other's posts and just so much love. And I got tears in my eyes. I went in and I thought, oh my God, all I had to do was put them together, put these incredible women together with a little bit of context, and what they actually brought into the space was, it just blew my mind. It just really deeply inspired me. And it was a reminder that I've had, over the years, so many times. Literally, I do not know who I would be today if I had not had the women's circle that I was part of when I first moved to San Francisco in 1999. And I think I was 21. I was really young. It's like 20 years ago, and I had a shaved head, and I felt very lost. I had never lived in a city before, and very quickly, I became part of this women's circle that I then met with. I think we even met weekly, and maybe it was every other week, but we met really frequently. We stayed in a lot of contact, and I felt like I grew up with them. And for 5 years, I circled with the same group of women almost every week. And women got married, and women got divorced, and women had babies, and it literally changed my life. And I don't know if Elizabeth Rutherford is still on. She joined at the very beginning. But again, I count myself, my blessings, really, as having met Elizabeth really early in my journey of moving to San Francisco. And I look at my life and I think, I would not be here. This woman, such as I am, I would not be here if I hadn't had some of these extraordinary women in my life. And then there was a part of me, I almost didn't want to speak to this because I'm like, well, we already all know this, right? But I think this is one of these kind of abstract concepts, or we know that this is a good idea, and then there's really bringing it into reality. And that's part of what happened for me when I knew that, well, what would I say here? I knew the no man diet was a good idea in general. I knew women would get something out of it. And then I knew that it would be like frosting on the cake for them to have this Facebook group. I knew it would be a place where I could relate to them and, you know, this kind of a thing. But again, I was actually a little bit relating to it like it was going to be the frosting on the cake. And then when I just looked at what happened when these women came together inside of just a gentle container and brought themselves forward, and how profoundly they were impacting each other. And that support really made such a difference. I was like, oh, right, this is the fucking cake. Like, I'm the icing, they're the cake. And that's actually the power of what we have when we're willing to bring ourselves together as women in this way. And there's this way, you know, like I feel like I want to make this caveat, which is like I freaking love men and all the relationships with men are fantastic. And that's all true. And I would say that, you know, I have some, again, this actually goes back to the women in my life. I didn't really plan to talk about this. I have some like bullet points over here I want to hit. This was not one of them. But there are, throughout my whole life, I've been just blessed to have some extraordinary elder mentor women in my life. And those women, when I look back, when they've been giving me like their little kernels of advice or their words of wisdom, have also, along with many other things, but have consistently said, it is the women in your life that is, this is the bedrock. You know, invest in these relationships and, you know, absolutely have like a wonderful man in your life, or get married and create a family. And these are these wonderful things in your life. But the bedrock on which that all rests is going to be the deep relationships that you have with women that carry you through the ins and outs, frankly, of intimate relationship and romantic relationship, that carry you through the intensity of mothering or not mothering, as the case may be. This is like, these are the relationships that are the bedrock foundation of your life. And, you know, when I was young, I think it was like I heard that, but I couldn't really hear it yet. And some of that had to do with not really hitting some of those places where like I needed a bedrock, and that it has come through, it's come somewhat through age. And I know I'm not that old, but I turned 40 this year. So I think I get a little bit of cred. I get a little bit of age cred here. But that, and going through some of these really challenging times, and the end of my marriage and the births of my children, and where I've been like, oh yeah, there is deep, deep truth there. So some of us, again, I really feel like this is just a blessing. Like these were given to me as blessings, and then I've cultivated them. So I'm not trying to say I had nothing to do with this, but I've known my best friend, I've known her since we were 6 months old. And not everybody gets to have that. So I get to say I'm lucky, but every single one of you does. Wherever you're at right now, you have the capacity to see like, oh, I'm interested in that woman, or she intrigues me, or I trust her even though I don't know why. I want to get to know that one better. You know, I'd like to hang out with her. Let's get our kids together so they can play while we drink tea. That one, I actually want to get childcare because I want to talk to her without our kids running around and the divided attention. But you each have the capacity to cultivate that wherever you're at in your life. And I've been blessed. You know, I've known my best friend since we were 6 months old. I have pictures of us like crawling over each other as babies. I've held both of her babies when they were within days of being born. And she has been with me through the births of both of my children. I'm going to cry now thinking about it. And frankly, through the birth of my first child, it was her face. She was the one that was in front of me the whole time. I had a midwife, and I had a midwife assistant, and my husband was there, and that was all really fantastic, and I needed all of it. But it was my friend Jamie who stood in front of me, and every time I didn't know what to do, I just said, like, what do I do next? What do I do next? And it's really because of her face. Oh, here I go again. This is what happens on my Facebook Lives. But it is because of her. I feel like I was able to walk the path that I needed to walk to birth my son. So this is actually, I don't know that I'll be able to go into all the pieces of this, but these are the pieces that are here. When I was sitting down to really think about this, I thought, I think we all actually know this. I think men and women, and we all actually know that this connection between women is one of the most powerful forces on the planet. And I'm not saying that there's some conspiracy theory out there, but I do think that in our history and in the culture, like the history of humans, that there's fear of that. I think that's the fear that drove the witch hunts. I think that's the fear that drives certain policies, I think. And again, I'm not saying it's conscious. Maybe sometimes it is, but I don't want to get into a political debate about that. But I really do believe that actually we all know that when women come together as comrades and in support of each other, and with an absence of competition, but that willingness to have each other's backs and to be for each other's greatness, that is one of the most powerful forces there is on the earth, and that we know that we could change everything. And it's why I think that there are energies out there, if you will, that seek to create the competition and to discredit the love between women, because we could actually change everything. Or we do. Not even we could. I think we could do it even more, but we do change everything when we come together in this way. We have the power to impact on a massive, massive, massive scale. And inside of that, there's this, I think it's important to not necessarily give it credence, but in order to do that, we have to acknowledge the places that we are afraid of each other, and the places that we are jealous of each other, or the places where there is like some feeling of competition that comes up. The more that we try to press that down and just like act nice on top of it, the more we don't have real connection. So it's different to say like, well, it's true, like to really say it's true, like she's not trustable, or she I know what's going on with her. It's another place to be like, man, I feel so jealous, when she talks to my boyfriend. I feel so jealous at her success. I feel so and that's just an acknowledgement and the willingness to express that, like, I want something that she has. And inside of that, what we can really find, I believe, is that loving, there's it doesn't even have to include jealousy, but it can. And I think it's important to acknowledge that rather than like pretend like, let's just all be nice and love each other. That sometimes there is that competition, or sometimes there is that jealousy, but that can be actually a place of connection. And what it is to witness another woman and like love what she has got going for her, rather than see what she has going for her as a threat to me. And I'm not saying this is easy, but it is actually simple. Like but there has to be a willingness to acknowledge the place where I want it, or I like something about her, or I have to be willing to acknowledge that. And I think you're right, Jenna, when you say the antidote to envy is appreciation. And there's some power, there's some like capacity to release that in the acknowledgement of it. And then like when I can share with a woman, like, damn, Like, I want the success you have, or like, you have a way of, like I said this actually to a girlfriend of mine. She's just like, everything about her flirts with the world. It's not even about like flirting with men or seducing or something. It's like she like walks, she's like flirting with the air around her. And I was like, I want that, you know. And then my capacity to like the willingness to get over myself and just say to her, like, you know, I can't remember exactly what I said, but I was like, there's just, you just flirt with life, you know, like, what is that? I like that. And that's tender, you know, it's vulnerable. And I think this is the place, you know, where it's important also to acknowledge, like, might you get hurt by other women? You might. It's possible. It's possible that you will make yourself vulnerable and you will be hurt. And I know that many of us were. You know, we were hurt when we were, I remember, gosh, it's telling actually that now I can't remember what they said. For a long time, I remember there was this girl, she was, I just adored her. She was like my best friend in school because my best friend didn't live there. And in fourth grade, she decided not to be my best friend. And I remember her and another girl being so mean to me in the girls' bathroom, and I was devastated. And I was devastated. Many of us were hurt in junior high, or we were hurt, you know, our bodies started to develop, and maybe a boy looked at us and a girl was jealous of the way the boy looked at us and she called us a slut, or, you know, who knows what happened. And I can't promise you that you won't be hurt again. I can't promise you that if you make yourself vulnerable and share your appreciation of another woman, that you won't be hurt. But I can promise you, you'll actually be okay. You'll actually be okay on the other side. And I do believe that I mean, absolutely, like the actual power and the connection between, but even inside of us, like the power that's released inside of us, when we offer that kind of connection and love and appreciation to another woman, it empowers us in such a way that we will be okay. We will be stronger because we offered it, no matter what the outcome is. And I really believe that. And not totally getting ahead of myself, but it's a nice segue here. Had a woman ask me at a, she was part of my Fierce Grace intensive, or my Fierce Grace. It's an 8-month program where I work really intensively with a small group of women. And we were at a live intensive together. And we do, when the women who are in my Fierce Grace program, we work together in our very small group before we have our larger Sacred Sovereignty intensives. And she brought up this question around becoming irrelevant. And especially like as we age, this fear of becoming irrelevant as women, that we no longer have like the beauty maybe to pull people's attention, or people won't listen to us, or they won't see us. And there's this thing like we could become irrelevant. And I remember as she said that there's two pieces came up for me. And then I'll share a little story about it. And I think this is actually true just across the board, whether we're talking about getting older and sort of getting irrelevant as we age, or just the fear that as women, somehow we're less relevant in the culture. Or sometimes, you know, it happens also when we have children. Sometimes this feeling like, oh, I was somebody and now I'm just a mom, and I'm, you know, do I even have a brain anymore? And can I talk about something more interesting than Cheerios? And maybe I'm just irrelevant. So I think this happens, you know, it happens at different times in our lives, and there are pivotal moments where maybe, but really it's across the board, this feeling of like, how do I not be irrelevant as a woman? And often I think what we want to do to become more relevant is be better than other women. I don't think we mean to most of the time, but that's the way that it plays out. It's like, that's where I can be more relevant, because there's no way I could actually be more relevant than the men or get more attention. You know, somehow that's like, it's like the internal assumption, the decks are already stacked, and the best place for me to at least start at is just to be more relevant than the women around me. I'm not saying it's pretty. I'm not saying any of us would be proud to admit it, but I think it happens. And so the first piece was really this piece around, like, don't treat other women like they're irrelevant. Even the ones you think are kind of silly. The part of us that dismisses women like Paris Hilton, it comes from the same part of us that's terrified of being irrelevant. And we create women as irrelevant when we make fun of Paris Hilton, when we make fun of the Kardashians, when we, you know, whoever it is we think is less than us or silly or, and you know, any of these things, like when we, especially if it's targeted actually at them as women, there's a way that we create women as irrelevance. And the exact antidote to that is, and you don't have to necessarily go and start talking up Paris Hilton or giving, you know, women that you don't agree with a lot of credence. Just stop treating them as irrelevant and watch the way that it fills your own cup around this fear that you might be irrelevant, that you might not have anything interesting to say, that someday you're not going to be the prettiest woman in the room. And I specifically, because this woman had brought this question around aging and irrelevance, and it was amazing what it brought up for me. I was like, whoa, I treat my mother like she's irrelevant, or like she's becoming irrelevant. And so the big thing that I said is, when I said specifically older women, like, don't treat older women like they're irrelevant, like they're, you know, sort of going a little crazy, like they're not as interesting or not as beautiful or don't deserve as much airtime. Like, if we went out of our way actually to honor even the kind of crazy ones, but honor what is in them. What is the wisdom of this lived experience of being a woman for 50, 60, 70, 80 years? And what might they possibly have to teach us? That not only will we actually gain that wisdom, not only will we fill our own cups and sort of, it's a way, rather than trying to become more relevant myself, but realizing like, oh, it doesn't have to be that way, but we actually create a culture of women as relevant and of older women as relevant as well. And I was so, again, I feel just like I was blessed. It was like a little angel came down and was like, oh, you think so? And not 2 days later, I was itching my nose. I was trying to just barrel through it. Not 2 days later, I was home. I went to this coffee shop, and there was this woman ahead of me, and I could tell she was older, but I couldn't tell how old. She had gray hair, and she just looked fantastic. She had she was, I don't know, she was wearing all sort of black and white and gray, and she had this shawl on, and then she had this bright red lipstick, and she just it wasn't anything in particular, but she held herself in a particular way, and I just noticed her, and I thought, oh, this woman she feels great. And it was a moment when I could have done nothing, and that would have been fine. And I thought, oh, I can tell her. And I can create something. I can create just in this moment, like a little bit more connection between women, a little bit more appreciation of what it is to be a woman in this space. I can let this woman know that she is seen and appreciated. And as she turned after, doing her coffee order, she turned and I just leaned in and I said, I just have to tell you, you look fantastic today. And she was already a really beautiful, for lack of a better word. She already, and her face just lit up. She beamed. She looked at me and she said, I turned 73 last week and have never felt better. And I was like, it blew my heart open. the whole thing, from my own, like what I got to bring to it, to that reflection back, and that now it lives in me, that there's this woman who turned 73 and she's never felt better. Like, what more could I want to look forward to as a 40-year-old woman, that I'm going to feel even better at 73? Like, that just sounds fantastic. So how did I get here? I don't remember. So let me check my notes. Well, you know what I'm going to do? So I'm just going to say, like, commercial break. And I know I've shared a little bit about the No Man diet, but I did want to let you all know that, because I've gotten so many questions and received so many inquiries, and frankly also because of what I shared at the beginning of this, like, just watching, like, holy moly, this community of women and what is available in this space, is that I decided to keep the doors open for just a few days longer. We officially started last Sunday, but there's no, like, you can absolutely catch up. As soon as you sign up, you'll get your welcome email, and then I'll include you in week 1, and you'll be right on track for next Sunday, week 2. So we're going to keep the doors open only until April 6th, and then they'll close. And at that point, you can sign up to be on the waiting list for next year. I'm not going to offer this program again until sometime in 2019. So if this calls to you now, I would say jump on it. It's frankly, it's a really cheap way to work with me, and like I said, I mean, what's being offered by the other women in the group is already, I mean, I just feel like I'm the icing and they're the cake. So thank you. So, I wanted to go back to this piece around, like, might you get hurt? You know, might somebody snub you, or might somebody not receive you as well as this extraordinary 73-year-old woman received me? Absolutely, you might. And it's the same, you know, I say this in intimate relationship, right? Like, should we withhold our hearts because we might be hurt? I don't believe so. My own experience, and the experience I have of witnessing, you know, just thousands of women, frankly, over the last 5-10 years, and men as well, but at how much actual, I mean, I want to use the word power, but there's got to be another word. It's like this incredible inner strength that comes from actually not guarding our hearts. That doesn't mean don't have any discernment, but this chronic guarding, I think, actually guards us from a huge amount of our own internal strength and power and capacity to create in the world, and to feel and to enjoy life and all of it. And so my encouragement really is that this chance that you might be hurt by another woman is not worth what is there for you to be gained when you unguard your heart in relationship with other women. I had a teacher about 8 years ago, maybe a little more, like 8.5 years ago, and I was in a really, really hard time. My son was really young, and my marriage was falling apart. And part of what was happening in that time was that, like, other women were dating he was still my husband, but we were separated, and it was kind of like this. And I was just so hurt by the whole thing. I was hurt by him, but I was really hurt by these women. And I went to this teacher that I had at the time named Sophia Diaz. And I just said, like, what should I do? I had walking pneumonia. I mean, I was just like a mess. and she said something that has really stayed with me all these years. And I still don't know if I totally agree with it, but it has really stayed with me. And I think there's something deeply true inside of this. And she said, it was basically to the effect of, you know, it isn't, the point isn't for these relationships with women for us to never hurt each other, but that real relationships with women actually begin at the point of breakdown. She may have even said begin at the point of betrayal, and I'm just not wanting to believe that's what she said. But it's definitely it was like this is where they begin. And well, what I want to say is I don't believe that all our relationships have to include some sort of breakdown or some sort of betrayal. I do believe that the way that we interact with those moments or how we meet those women when we feel so hurt, in the end, that has a lot to do with where those relationships going to go. And even again, I mean, frankly, even my very best friend, who I've been best friends with since I was 6 months, like we have hit some points in our relationship, and it has been our capacity to move through those and say like, oh, that hurt. And then to hear each other and to listen and that is why we're still friends to this day. That's why when we haven't talked in 2 weeks, we're like, wow, it's been forever. You know, and even though we live 5 hours apart and we both are, you know, have 2 children, and like that's why these relationships are as strong as they are. That's why, you know, that all the women I have around me, the ones that are like so tight, we have all gone through something together. So it's this encouragement to not let that fear that you might be hurt, or that young, tender part of you that maybe did get really hurt when you were young, just to not let that part keep running your life and keep guarding your heart. Because it's a long time ago. You know, I remember when that happened to me in 4th grade. I mean, I must have been 10, right? That's 30 years ago. I think I can relax that little part of my heart now. I think I can trust some other women. And I think I'm strong enough to meet the moment if they don't accept me quite the way I want to be accepted. So I think I've mostly said, I mean, I could probably talk for a long time here, but I've said most of what I want to say and probably a lot more because I always end up on these tangents. Hi, Allison. So I want to really give the invitation again for anyone to offer your own shares or your own questions, and make sure that the space is open for some dialogue before I'm going to sign off, probably in about 5 minutes here. But I just want to say again that I really, to me, especially where we're at in the world right now, I mean, certainly I live in the United States, like in this culture, in the sort of broader Western world as it is, but I think in the collective world, there's an opportunity, and we've had it. You know, this opportunity keeps arising. I don't think it's going anywhere, but we have it. We have it very alive right now as a time to where can these connections with the women be strengthened, and what would then be possible in the world inside this extraordinary web of women having each other's backs. And I don't believe that always means, you know, I mean, I think I've spoken to this before, but it doesn't always mean like love and light, and I'm only going to say that what you do is good, and, you know, I'm never going to get upset with you. But real, you know, like the place of standing for women being like, hey girl, like, what's up with that? You know, or I love you too much to not say something about this relationship I keep seeing you get into, or this man I keep seeing you go back to, or, you know, like, I love you too much not to point this out. And frankly, to really listen to each other in those moments, and to listen to the women who have different experiences than us. That's been, I don't have time to go into it in this live, but, you know, it's been huge for me to really sit back and listen to the women of color in my life, or that I chosen now to follow on Facebook, because they're bringing perspectives that I don't see. I've lived my entire life in predominantly white California, white areas of California, and there are perspectives that I'm just like, I did not know that. I have never had that experience, but that doesn't mean it's not true for another woman. So how can we listen? How can we broaden this web? You know, how can we believe each other and support each other and call each other to our best? And I really do believe, frankly, that this is world changing. So, Rachel said, how do you know which women you want to have really deep relationships and which you don't? Sometimes I feel like I should want really deep relationships with all the women, but a lot of them I really don't want to. Thank you for saying that and admitting it. And there's a couple things I would say about that. And one is, I'm going to start from kind of like the more antagonistic side of me. And I would say that there's some value in maybe not like questioning ourselves, but there's some value in like, if a woman kind of triggers us, actually stopping and softening. It doesn't have to mean we have to bring her like all the way in and reveal everything to her and hang out with her all the time and share our deep, dark secrets. But it's worth pausing, you know, and breathing, going like, man, what is it about that woman that is like bringing up stuff for me? Either what is she doing that irritates me? What has she got that I want? What is like creating this feeling inside me that has me be like, not her. And just get curious about that. I don't think that necessarily means that you're going to be close to her, but it's worth paying attention and getting curious. And then the kind of like on the very other side of that, there's a part of me that wants to say like, also, this is where I think as women, especially like really trusting our intuition. And I know I've talked to you about this in the past, Rachel, inside, you know, other groups that we've been in, but this piece that's like our intuition is different than the story. And so like a little example of this is when my ex-husband and I did separate and I actually moved. I'd been living in Berkeley at the time and I moved about an hour and a half north. And I was a single mom. So it really shifted like my life. And most of my friends were in the Bay Area at that time. And I mean, frankly, I wasn't seeing most of them anyway, because we're all so busy. But I had this idea that like, oh, I could just pop out to coffee with her. She was right here. Or we were all like in community together. I might see them. And there was this really large community that included a lot of women. It was like, oh yeah, all of these women are in my community. And then when I moved, it kind of took me out of it. And I had to make an effort to see people in general, but to see the women in my life. And I really just started to pay attention to like, who did I want to make that effort for? And if there were places where I was like, where I had thoughts, like, I don't trust her. Again, I can follow the story train and be like, I don't trust her because da, 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 da. Like I pretend like I know something about her. Or I can just stop at like, oh, I don't really trust her. That's me. That's on me. But it is telling me something about me. Not necessarily about her, but I can still make choices. It can just be like, oh, like that isn't where I choose to put a lot of my time and attention and really share myself. And frankly, I mean, expect is kind of like a dirty word these days, but that's not the place where I'm going to imagine that I'm going to get nourished back. Because why would I do that to myself? Like if I don't trust a woman, again, it may not mean anything actually about her, but it does mean something about me. So those are kind of two sides that I would put it on. And then I would really like, but then I would caution, you know, this is to everyone. I would caution any part of you that then tries to create like data or story to back up your choices, because then you're just making shit up. So if you're like, I don't really want to be friends with her, great. That is 100% fine. You do not have to be friends with every woman. But if you feel guilty about that and you're like, I don't want to be friends with her because da 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 da, then you're making stuff up about her, and that's just rude. So I hope that answers your question for you and other women. But I think that we can be for women without having to be besties with everybody. That there's a way we can just like have that field of support and look for it in the world. Look for like, I mean, it's a tricky thing, right? Because this is tricky, but there are sometimes threads on Facebook that are about like, who are the teachers or who are the coaches? And, you know, there's a freaking billion white men coaches and teachers and who've written books that you can just think of like that. And so I often want to be the voice that brings in the women. I'm like, oh, I read this woman's book. Oh, this woman teacher. Oh, this, like this coach who's a woman. Like, I just want to bring those women forward. But then I am pretty discerning about like the women who are tight in with me. That's a small group. Allison said, I've been practicing seeing the world from their perspective, even if I don't agree, and it softens me. Yes, absolute curiosity. Exactly. I mean, I think you and I are really aligned in that there's this place of like, wow, even if it kind of triggers me or creates like anxiety or something, I'm like, what if I just listened? Because frankly, I know that I'm okay. Like my sort of strength and my actual physical well-being. I mean, all these things, nothing is threatened by listening. That's my experience. And exactly what you said, that we want to be significant and right and seen and heard. I mean, I think we all want to be heard. So we all have that gift actually that we can give to each other, is like to listen. Rachel, you said, I struggle with the guilt. Yes, absolutely. And frankly, that's this place where it's a place of women taking responsibility, is like noticing when we can get to that place where it's like, oh, but that's mine to work with. No one can take that away from me. And even if somebody frankly, even if somebody says like they are judging you, it's like, oh, any place that I'm taking that on, that's mine to work with. So it's beautiful just to bring awareness to that. And Allison, well, you are a stronger woman than I, because I could not do that Google search. Oh, well, thank you. Really, thank you all who were here live. Thank you to any of you who are watching the replay. This is something that I feel really, really passionate about. And so I appreciate all of your time and attention. I appreciate those of you who engaged live. And if any of you are watching the replay, please post any questions or any comments, and I'll come back and we can have like a written dialogue about it. And for anyone who had their interest sparked about the No Man Diet, I'm going to post that link in the comments so you can go there, check it out. If it calls to you, jump in fast. We're going to close the doors on April 6th. And sending you all much love. Ciao.